Hey, my name is Marco Brown. I'm a divorce attorney in Salt Lake City. I'm going to come to you today and talk to you about my journey as a law firm owner and an entrepreneur, somebody who's gone from $0, and zero is a very nice way to put that. I actually like minus probably $450,000 to where we are today, which is a seven-figure plus income. So this is off, right? Okay. So I'm going to do this by talking about 4 stories. Okay, I'm going to break up my journey into these 4 stories, and then after telling you the story, kind of tell you the lessons I learned during each of these periods. So let's start with that. The first story is what I call the $8.50 per hour UFC fight. Second story is the best lie I ever told my wife. Third story is the great shower incident of 2015. And story number 4 is destination disease. So let's get into each one of those. So the first story is the $8.50 per hour UFC fight. So just to give you a little bit of a background, I graduated from the University of Nebraska Law School and clerked for judges in Iowa, and then went to New Mexico to start being a lawyer, essentially. I worked for an insurance defense firm, which was the worst single job I've ever had in my life, including cleaning toilets and doing anything else. My dad owned a salmon hatchery in Alaska, and it was way worse than working a salmon hatchery in Alaska. I used to gut the fish, I used to get the eggs out of the fish, I used to, inseminate the whole thing. This job as a lawyer working insurance defense was way worse than all of that. And there was a point at which I didn't smile for 3 straight months at that job. I hated that job. And I think we've all kind of been there, right? You just have those jobs that you just can't stand at all. That was mine. My wife was really worried about me. We had a young kid at that point. I wasn't even playing with him. I was just depressed all the time. I just hated it. So decided that we were going to move. And my wife wanted to come back to Utah, and she wanted to get a doctorate. She sings opera, so she wanted to get a doctorate at the University of Utah. I thought, great, I hate my job, let's go do this. So we came up here to Salt Lake City in 2010. 2010 is not a good year for attorneys, it turns out. It's just after the Great Recession, and no one is hiring, like literally nobody is hiring. So I sit down with a few firms, they tell me, like, we got nothing. Large firms in LA, New York, Chicago are shutting down at this point, which has never happened in essentially the history of the legal market in the United States. So it's a bad time. And I, being not the brightest guy on the earth, decide, hey, you know what? Why don't I open up my own law firm? I'd always kind of wanted to do that. I think it was 33 at the time. Thought, I'm probably going to run out of energy at some point. So if I don't do it now, I'm probably never going to do it. So I decided, let's give it a whirl. And it was really, really rough. As you can imagine, it was just so utterly difficult. I had nothing in the beginning at all. I had $160,000 worth of student loan debt from law school. And I have friends with $250,000 worth of debt from law school. But I had $160,000. I was not making anything at all. I think, the first, we'll get into this a little bit more, but the first few months of the law firm, I probably made $3,000, right? So I was working the law firm during the day, trying to figure this out. And then I was working the job I had during college at night and on weekends. So I was working 40, 45 hours at that job that paid $8.50 an hour. And then I was working, during the day in the law firm, probably 40 to 50 hours a week. So I'm working 80 to 100 hours a week trying to make things work. My wife is in a doctorate program. We have this little kid. Like, it's a really, really rough time. Okay, so that is kind of the stage for story number 1. Now I'm going to apologize because I have terrible handwriting. So this is $8.50 per hour UFC fight. Okay, so the job I have during college was working with people that have mental disabilities, okay? Usually mental retardation. And many of them are sex offenders as well. So it's a very challenging population to deal with. It was very rewarding though. It's still my favorite job I've ever had in my entire life. I loved working with those guys. They were just great. I loved my colleagues. We were doing something that I thought was really meaningful for them. So what we would do is we had apartments in the city where these individuals lived, and we helped facilitate that. So they got to, not live in an institution, but they could live in an apartment. We'd go out to activities all the time. Like, it was just a great, great time. But, they got some problems, and some of them are really super violent. I worked what was called the crisis team in college, and I dealt with the most violent of the violent back then. So I was kind of used to this. I liked this. But I get into this house. I'm working this house, and one of the guys' names is Muhammad, and Muhammad was seriously violent. The problem was that he was of fairly normal IQ as well. So he was violent and he was smart. That is a tough combination, okay? So I've gone the rounds with Muhammad before. But there's one particular night where, I've probably been doing this job for 3-4 months at this point, and Muhammad has an episode. Gets freaked out. I tell him, hey man, just leave, okay? Let's not fight. We've fought before, we've done this before, but just leave, cool down. He leaves. Probably an hour later, he comes back, and I'd locked the door because I didn't want him back in because I figured he was still violent. He starts pounding on the door. I'm talking to him through the door. Hey man, calm down, let you back in. He didn't like that, so he wants to come in the door. So he kicks the door in. Like literally, it's like SWAT, the movie, right? With Colin Farrell, I think. He's kicking this door in. And the last time we went at it, he rushed me and I was able to kind of fend him on. This time I was taken a little bit aback by it. So I end up on the ground because he rushes in the house. I end up on the ground on my back. He is on top of me like Conor McGregor, trying to go at me. Okay, so I'm in like full guard and he's trying to smack me and break my nose. The best I could come up with, because I'm not really a fighter, is I held his head, right? And I just held it right next to my chest. So he couldn't bite, so he couldn't like hit me. He couldn't get leverage to hit me. And thankfully he didn't figure out he could bite me, because that would have been extraordinarily bad. This is all going through my head, right? As we're sitting like grappling on the floor. So he doesn't bite me, but he's trying to smack me. He's trying to do all these things. And I am sitting there talking to him. I'm talking to him in his ear. Hey man, let's calm down. It's okay. I'm not going to do anything. Let's just, let's let this pass. Get up. And I do that for probably about 3 to 5 minutes, okay? Now the entire time, what I want to do really is to like start smacking him in the head to make him stop, because I'm describing this, but he's trying to gouge me, he's trying to pinch me, he's trying to do all these things. So finally he stops, and there's this kind of uneasy truce between us, right? We both get up, we're staring at each other the entire time, but eventually he stops and he goes into his room. I still have to work. This is probably 10 or 11 o'clock at night. And I think I had to work the entire night. So I probably started at 5 p.m. and I have to stay at the house until 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock the next morning. And this is after I did an entire day in the office trying to make the law firm work. So I have all night to think about this. I go home the next day and I just felt like such a horrible loser. I'm an attorney. I clerked. I graduated with distinction, with honors from law school. I clerked for judges. I did these things. And I'm working a job for $8.50 an hour. And I almost got my trash handed to me by a guy named Muhammad, okay, with an IQ of like 70. I just felt terrible. I felt like such a complete loser. And that, I will never forget that feeling, actually. So that's kind of the end of that story, right? We're going to move on and see the progression, but that's really the $8.50 per hour UFC fight. Now, what did I learn from this stage? Okay, one thing I learned, and I learned this in hindsight, I didn't learn it at the time, but one thing I learned is that feeling like a loser is okay. You know, every master was once a disaster, right? Everybody feels like a loser in the beginning, and that's all right. Now, I didn't think that at the time. Like, feeling like a loser is never a great place to be, especially if you got a wife and you got kids who depend on you. You know, ultimately, if you're going to do your own thing, if you're going to start your own business, if you're going to do your deal, you're going to feel like a loser. Because when I started this law firm, I knew absolutely nothing about what I was doing. I hadn't taken a class on law firms, you know, how to run one. I hadn't taken an entrepreneurship class. I was not a business guy. I'd never done this before. So I'm just like learning as I go along. The first lesson is feeling like a loser is okay. Like I told you, I have terrible handwriting. Okay, that's okay. Let's do this again. That one's really bad. You're never going to be able to tell what that word is. But again, it's okay because you're going to get over it. You're fine. Everybody feels like a loser. They won't tell you that, but they really do. So you're going to be all right. Okay, so the second lesson I learned here is fear is a great motivator. At this time, starting out, having $160,000 in debt, not being able to not knowing what to do, I was just drenched in fear every day. What I did is I used that fear to push myself forward. Now, you don't want to stay here, okay? This is what I figured out later, is you don't want to stay in this place where fear rules your day every day because you can't physically do that and you can't mentally and spiritually do that. But there's a period of time, everybody goes through it, that they're scared all of the time. And you just have to use that fear. Don't let it cripple you, okay? Don't let it get you depressed, but use that fear to ramp up and get to the next stage and get out of it. Because if you don't have that fear, I don't think you're really going places. Okay. And then the third, so this is 1, 2, 3, is get out ASAP. Okay, you want to get out of this stage as quickly as humanly possible. Because again, if you stay here and you're ruled by fear, and you don't know when you're going to eat next, and all of these things are weighing on you every day, eventually you are just going to stop. Okay? You're not going to be able to do it for very long. So use it. Get out of this stage. Okay. Okay, we're going to move on to the second story. And the second story is the best lie I ever told my wife. Oh, there we go. Okay, so the Muhammad story, the UFC story, is within the first 3-4 months of starting the law office here in Salt Lake. This one is probably 6, 7, 8 months. Okay, so we're a few months in the future here. And my wife, who sings opera, is singing over in Italy. It's during the summer, so she's doing her PhD, and she's singing over in Italy during the summer. So she's gone. I'm at home, just kind of doing my thing. Our son, we'd actually give him to our moms to watch during that period of time, because I'm working 80 to 100 hours a week. So I have a lot of time to think. And at this time, nothing had really gotten better. I think I made $3,000 at this point. So nobody was paying. I was still working an $8.50 job to pay the rent, to pay for food. And I had stayed in this scared state, right? This fear state. It was eating at me, and I didn't see anything getting better. So at this point, I actually thought, okay, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I've reached my limit. I am going to go find a job with a law firm, okay? And if you've ever done this and you've started your own thing, almost everybody gets to this point unless you're really super lucky and really good at what you do, where it just takes off. You grind and grind and grind, and then eventually you're like, man, I can't do this anymore. I just need to go work for somebody else. They're going to pay me. I'm going to do kind of a mediocre job, and they're still going to pay me. I have security. That's kind of how I felt. So I went to interview with law firms, and I did not want to do this. I told myself when I started this law firm that I would never work for another person. I hated it so much, working at a law firm, and it was so soul-sucking that I told myself I would never do it. But if you ain't got no money, if you ain't got no prospects, you're working 100 hours a week for nothing, essentially, $3,000 in like 6-7 months. You go look for jobs. You go look for jobs at law firms. So that's what I did. So I go and I interview with a few places, and I get turned down at all of them. And I'm a good attorney too. I'm a good attorney. But I got turned down at every one of them. That loser feeling I felt with, that Muhammad story, like it was just extending. I felt like such a loser. So I didn't know what to do. I was going to start, doing more and more of this. And also, I had been lying to my wife for a long time. So I didn't want her to worry about any of this because she's going through her PhD program. She's taking care of our son. She's fantastic. I didn't want to burden her with this. So I didn't tell her that essentially we had no money. I had no prospects. I didn't have anybody paying. I just didn't want to burden her with that. So I took all of that on myself, which is, in retrospect, probably a mistake. But I thought I was doing what was best. So I had internalized all of this fear and all of this emotion and all of this angst, everything else, and it was just eating me up inside. And I'm alone, right? My wife is in Italy, my kid's away. I just have all day to sit and think these thoughts. And you go to bad places when you do that. So that's where I was. And I kept pushing on. I would interview, nothing would happen. I would work the law firm. I just kept doing it because I figured if I'm not getting on with the law firm, I got to do this, right? So I kept doing it. And then one week, it was like magic. It was like the hand of God came down, and everybody who owed me money paid. I got paid $17,000 in 2 weeks. I mean, I've been hounding people. I hadn't figured out how to get paid as an attorney yet, but I was kind of hounding people, not as much as I should. I wasn't sending out bills like I should have. I didn't know what I was doing, but everybody paid in 2 weeks. And I was absolutely floored by this. I still remember the emotion of all the checks coming in. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'd never seen money like this in my entire life, ever. My parents are government workers. We were always, we always did well, but never anything great. So I'd never seen this kind of money. And it came on that heel of I'm just down and out and super depressed, and I can't get a job anywhere else. Everybody paid, man. And it was the most beautiful feeling ever. So I took about $6,000 out of the $17,000, and I paid off some attorneys I owed some money to because I was doing an office sharing arrangement with them. So I went and I paid that off because I don't like debt, right? I had $160,000 from law school, but I don't like debt. So I paid that off, and then I have $11,000 left over. And it wasn't just that people paid those 2 weeks. People kept paying. I turned a corner. I'd figured something out, and I didn't know what it was at that point, but I turned this corner, and people kept paying. And I knew at that point that I was going to be okay. It was this real deep sense within myself that I had figured some things out. I was going to be fine. I was going to get more clients. They were going to pay me. So what I did to celebrate that was I bought a ticket and I went and visited my wife. Now, this is the best lie part, so that I'd lied to her for a long time, and those were not good lies. But this is the best lie I ever told her. So I told her that I arranged this whole thing, and I told her, hey, look, I'm going to be in trial for the next 2 days, so I'm not going to be able to talk. And I told her this while I was standing in line at the airport about to get on the plane to Venice. Okay? She says, okay, great, love you, honey. We, click off. I turn the cell phone off. It's one of those flip phones back then. That's how old I am. So I put it in my backpack and I get on the plane. 14 hours later, I get off the plane in Venice, get in the rental car. She is in this little town next to the Adriatic coast on the east coast of Italy called Nova Feltria. And it's about 3.5 hours. So I just start driving. I remember that I had an electric razor with me at that point. So I'm using the electric razor in the car, and this lady, because Italians don't have electric razors really, they don't use them. So this lady is passing me and she's like guffawing and she's watching me shave in the car, right? I totally remember every second of this trip. So get there, Nova Feltria is a little bit in the mountains. So, I go up in the mountains. I don't know where my wife is in this town. So I park the car, and I had lived in Italy as a younger man. So I park the car, I know how to get around. I just start asking Italians, like, where's the teatro, where's the theater? And in their very Italian way, they tell me where the theater is, which is to say that it's 100 meters in this direction. So in Italy, 100 meters could mean 100 meters, or it could mean like a kilometer or more, right? So I just go in that general direction, and then I would ask somebody else, where's the teatro, right? And they would tell me. And then eventually I make it to the theater. I walk in, tons and tons of students in there, singing and doing their deal. She's practicing. And it takes a few more minutes. So I kind of stand in the corner. She gets done practicing. She's talking to people, and then our eyes lock, okay? And she sees me, and she's completely dumbfounded by the entire thing. But it's that, she's dumbfounded for a second, and then she's really happy. So she kind of lets out that little, scream that says she's happy. And then we walk toward each other, hug, and I explained to her exactly what has been going on, how we didn't have any money, how I had started interviewing for jobs, how I was scared, and then that we got paid, and then we were okay. And there was this huge catharsis of emotion at that point because we both knew that we'd be okay. And I remember the stage director saw this whole thing, and he just starts crying, like bawling these tears out. But it was just such a beautiful scene, and something I will remember for the rest of my life. And that was by far the best lie I ever told my wife. Okay, so what did I learn from this story? Okay, let's erase this and write the lessons up here. Okay. So the first lesson is, let's try that again. You will be okay. You'll be fine. Everybody goes through this stuff. You read biographies of great people that do great things in business, great things in politics, great things in religion. They all go through this portion up front, or some portion during their career in which they absolutely are convinced that it's all going straight to hell, okay? And that they're going to fail. And a lot of them never really get over this. But what they teach you and what this taught me was you will be okay. Stick with it. You're smart. You're going to figure things out if you really want to, and you're going to be fine, okay? Okay, so the second is you really need to reward yourself. If I had not bought that plane ticket, if I had not gone to see Demery, my wife, I would never have had that experience and that emotional catharsis. I would never have had that memory, okay? I did that because I did something extraordinarily hard and it worked out and I rewarded myself for it. If I never rewarded myself for it, I would have missed this great opportunity, because I still think back, when I have a tough time, I still think back to that day and what happened there, and that I will be okay. And that comes directly because I decided to reward myself. So it's okay. reward yourself every once in a while. Don't do it all the time. Don't go buy some stupid, expensive car, some stupid expensive house that you really shouldn't have anyway, like that big consumption sort of thing. That's garbage. Reinvest your money in your business, but do take some time to reward yourself every once in a while. Okay. And then third is savor these moments. Like I said, I still think about this pretty often. I love this memory. I made this memory, okay? Go back and savor it, man. And maybe you don't savor it that much in that moment, but over the years, you will think about that. I will think about this memory, this lie I told my wife, until I am dead. And beyond that, when I'm living, hopefully with God, I will think about that, okay? Savor those moments. Okay, so that is story number 2, the best lie I ever told my wife. And we're going to move on to story number 3, which is the Great Shower Incident of 2015. That's an F. I promise it's not a P, it's an F. Okay, so this is in 2010. These 2 stories that I've told you are in 2010. Fast forward to 2015, so we're 5 years in the future. So what's happened in the interim? So I'm still pretty much just me doing it. I think at this point I have a part-time attorney, McKinsey, who's working for me, and then I have a paralegal office manager, Jody, who is working for us. But I'm still doing everything. I do every case. I don't write the paperwork anymore. McKinsey does that for me. Jody kind of sets the appointments and does those mediations, does those sorts of things, takes care of the logistics. But I am on every case. I go to every mediation. I attend every court hearing. I go to every trial. Okay? And at this point, in the beginning, I'd made so many mistakes. And I'll talk about, specifically those mistakes I made in live streams in the future. But I made every mistake under the sun. I took every case that came in the door. I was trying to please everybody and do everything for everybody. But I figured out that I liked family law. I liked divorce. I was good at it. For whatever reason, I did it really well. I helped a lot of people and their kids maximize the time with their kids, maximize their money. And so I thought, why don't I just do this one thing instead of doing a whole bunch of different things and reinventing the wheel all the time? So that's exactly what I did. So that happened in about 2012. So from 2012 until 2015, I focused exclusively on family law and divorce. And I did well. So in 2015, I win Divorce Attorney of the Year in Utah. And this isn't some crappy thing on the internet, okay? This is voted on by my peers in the Bar Association here in Utah. There were 748 people in the Family Law Bar Association, okay, group. I won, and it was by popular vote. I won with 50 or 60% of the vote out of 5 people in the running. So I won by a landslide, okay? And it was because I had tried really, really hard to serve my clients well and to be a very good colleague to my colleagues, okay? So there's this aspect of what happened, which is I've kind of come up through the ranks. I've helped a lot of people. I'm fairly well respected at this point by my colleagues. That feels fantastic. I don't care about prizes. I don't care about awards. I cared about this award though, because this meant that I arrived, okay? And I remember getting it, and I remember being so happy about it. My wife came to the ceremony. It was in front of 200 people. It was great. And then 2 days later, I went back to normal life, right? That happens after you win awards. You just go back to what you were before. And I had all of the same problems I had before winning that award. And the problems were legion, okay? I had worked so hard during that period of time, I was so stressed because everything depended on me, and I had not learned how to run an actual enterprise or a business, that I was just doing everything. That I had let myself get fat. I had let myself get really emotionally out of whack. I was not doing terribly well in my marriage, right? My wife is a fantastic human being, but I was not paying attention to her or my son the way I should have. Like my spirituality was not great. I just had lots and lots of problems. And the weight was probably the biggest manifestation of that. I'd kind of ballooned. And I was obese when I was a kid, and I was obese until I was about 18 or 19, okay? And I got over that, and I'd always watch my weight pretty religiously. But this, I let myself just go and go and go. It was to the point where my suits didn't even fit, right? I was like the fat dude in a suit, in a too small a suit. It was really bad. So I had all of these problems. And I remember getting in the shower. I love showers, okay? They're like my reprieve from the day. So I get in the shower. This is a couple days after I won this award. And this had happened to me before, but today was particularly bad. So I get in, I'm okay for about 5 minutes. Then I start thinking about cases, okay? And if you're an attorney or you're a business person and you know exactly what's happening, right? You get thinking about problems, you get thinking about cases, then your heart starts to palpitate, okay? And then I get this restriction in my chest, and it just feels terrible, okay? There's this pressure on my chest. I get stress headaches all the time now. And I was getting a stress headache. I could feel it coming on. This is like 6 o'clock in the morning. So, but more than that, this time, because this has happened to me before, this time I was shown my future. And my future included me dying when I was about 60, between 60 and 65, okay? And this wasn't like, you kind of imagine your future. This was, God showed me my future, okay? I'm a believer. I think this was him showing me, you continue down this path, you continue doing what you're doing, this is what happens to you. So you make a choice. Do you want this or do you not want this? And I chose during that shower that I did not want that. I would have died when I was 60 or 65, man, and I would have left my family. I didn't want to leave my family, okay? I loved my family. I always thought, we had one kid, I always thought there were more kids that we needed to have. And I knew that if I went down this path, we'd never have more kids. And I would leave everybody when I was 60 or 65. So I decided, no, I'm not going to do that. I came out of that shower and I started thinking, okay, now I've made this decision, what do I do? Like, I don't have any idea how to get over this place that I am. I feel stuck and I feel terrible. So I spent some time thinking about it. And what I came up with was, let's pick one thing to work on. And that one thing has to be the most important thing. And hopefully that one, by working on this one thing, it'll have all these trickle-down effects, these beneficial effects in the business and in my life, that I can start solving other problems that I have. So what I decided to do was I decided to get paid 100% for the work I was doing. So at this point, I'm probably getting paid 50 cents on the dollar for the work I'm doing. So I'm charging, I think back then I was charging $250 an hour. So I'm making $125 an hour, right? Which sounds great, but you know, there's advertising, there's all these other things that go into it. So I'm not making much money either. And I decided, no, this is the lowest hanging fruit. I'm already doing this stuff. Why don't I just learn how to get paid for it? And then I double my revenues, okay? So that's what I did first. I did that and I worked out. So I started getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I started exercising. But it was mostly the getting paid thing that really kind of, changed everything around. Because once I made that commitment, I was able to make other commitments. And that one thing changed everything in the law firm. When you go from 50 to 60 cents on the dollar to 100 cents on the dollar, your life changes dramatically. Because when you have money, you don't have problems. If you can cut a check and solve a problem, you don't have a problem, okay? And that's what I learned in this period was money solves problems, okay? And the other thing I learned really is that pick one thing. Pick your biggest problem and solve your problem, okay? Once you do that, it's this kind of apex idea, right? Once you pick that biggest problem and solve it, you get all these amazing beneficial downstream effects that lift you up and lift your team up, okay? So that's really what I learned during this period of time. But the other thing I learned, sorry, I haven't written these up here, but the other thing I learned is you have to decide. Okay, if I hadn't made that decision in that shower that day, I may very well have walked the path that I was walking at that point. Okay, and I'm 44, so I would have had 16, maybe 20 more years, and then I would have died fat and of a heart attack and left my family. So you have to decide. And once you decide, just go all in, man. Absolutely go all in. Okay, so that's the great shower incident of 2015. Okay. Okay, now we have story number 4, and this is destination disease. Okay, now fast forward, that's 2015 was the great shower incident. 2020 is destination disease. So at this point, 5 years later, I've got my stuff together, right? I'm getting paid, got a much bigger law firm. I think at that point there are 4 or 5 attorneys working under me, staff. You know, we got good revenues. We're helping lots and lots of people. At that point, we probably helped 3,000 people through the divorce process. And things were going great. You know, my income was really good. I was going to Italy all the time with my family because that's where, you know, I lived there when I was younger. I love Italy, so I'm going back. I'm going back like 3-4 times a year, eating food over there, visiting my friends, staying in cool places, seeing all the sights. You know, we're going to Belize. We're going all over the place. And it feels super comfortable. Like, loved it. Comfortable, okay? Money coming in, you know, we're able to make investments. We're putting away money for college, for, you know, all of these things, you know, religious missions for our kids, giving money to our church, doing really well. And that feels good for a period of time. And then it doesn't feel good anymore because I can't do stasis, right? I realized at that point that I'm 42 years old. And I could have lived out the rest of my life doing that, right? I could have lived to 80 or 85 with that system, making that kind of money, living that sort of lifestyle. Would have been perfectly comfortable, would have been perfectly happy with it, but I wouldn't have been, right? I think I would have been, but then I realized like I can't stay here. I just can't, as a human being, I can't do that sort of thing. So I have what is called destination disease, right? I have arrived at what I had envisioned before. And at this point, really, I didn't even arrive at what I envisioned before because I didn't have the greatest vision of what I wanted to do when I started my law firm. I just knew I wanted to make money and provide for my family. But at this point in 2020, I was making 6-7 times what I ever thought I would make in income in a year, okay? Like multiples, just blowing it out of the water, right? And that's the destination disease. I've come to this place, it feels really good, but I can't stay here. So I have to move on. I have to do something else. And that is extraordinarily uncomfortable. That realization and then that process, because you get to this place, you've tried so hard, right? I've transformed myself as a human being from something that worked relatively well before I started my law firm, and then something that worked relatively well during my law firm. I'd gone through all of that. That's super painful, but I had done it. And then I realized that I was going to have to do all of that all over again. But it was going to be even worse. It was going to be even more uncomfortable because I've got to this place and I'm doing it at this level, but I got to do it at this level right here, right? And like the cost to get up there is exponentially harder than the cost down here to get from here to here. So again, I have to make a decision. I have to decide, am I just going to stay here? Am I going to do this thing or am I going to go up? And When I stay at a place, when I have stasis, I get depressed, and I know that and that's an indicator to me that I need to move up. So I decided at that point, okay, I got to move up, which means that I got to take this money that was flowing in. It was good. Let me tell you, it was good. I got to take those vacations. I got to take that. I'm going to do away with those in large part. And COVID helped with doing away with the vacations a little bit, but that's another story. So, I got to do away with those, and I got to make the reinvestment into my business and into my attorneys, right? And into doing different things, different marketing things, figuring out what to do to kind of grow to this next level, what to do to grow within the state of Utah and to serve more people and help more people with divorce and child custody cases, and how to get out of Utah and go to other states like Arizona, Colorado, these things. That is exponentially more difficult for an attorney to do that, to jump to other states, right? I got to figure these things out. So I made that decision, and that is where I am right now, is figuring that out and doing all of that internal work that's necessary, becoming a leader, on a different strata than what I've done before. So this story is, the other stories I've been able to look back and tell you what I learned from those periods. But this story is happening right now. So I don't know exactly, Well, I'll come back in a few years and I'll talk about story number 4 and exactly what I learned from it. But as I'm going through it right now, these are the things I have learned. Okay. So the first is comfort is nice. But only for a moment. All right, that's a B. I gotta do better with that. Okay. But only for a moment, right? Again, money's great, all these things are great, but man, realizing your potential and doing what you know you can do, that opens up your world. Like in 2020, I was so much better a human being and a law firm owner and a business person and a lawyer than I was in 2010 and 2015, that I didn't even recognize myself. But what that did is it showed me that I had way more potential than I ever thought possible. Okay, and it's the realization of that potential that really brings joy to human beings, okay? If you don't realize it, you're always gonna know that you left so much on the table. You left so much of yourself. You didn't help people like you should have. You didn't make the money you should have. You didn't provide for your family you should have. You didn't provide for your team. You were selfish, okay? You realize that. So realize your potential, and that's what I've learned is I gotta realize my potential no matter how difficult it is, okay? And this is, the second is your potential is so much greater than you realize. Again, this is what I've learned inside myself, but I'm talking to you directly, your potential is so much greater than whatever it is you're doing right now. If you're working an $8 an hour job, a $20 an hour job, or whatever it is, if you're alone, you're trying to get married, you're trying to have kids, your potential is so much greater. Your potential with your kids is so much greater. What you can teach them is so much greater. Just realize that within yourself and then move on it. Decide that you are going to do whatever it is you have to do to realize that potential. So go do it. And then the last thing, you will need to remake yourself. Gets worse as I get down further. Okay, you'll need to remake yourself to improve. Okay, you cannot just stay where you are. You need to become a new human being. And that's what I found in myself in this process, is I have to really take myself, unpack who I am, figure out the things that don't work, and just leave them by the wayside, right? There's a guy named Nassim Taleb that talks about this all the time. He wrote The Black Swan, Skin in the Game, or the best, brightest guys on the earth. Amazing, amazing scholar, really interesting dude. But he talks about this, he calls it the via negativa. So you have to first figure out what you can give up, what you can sacrifice, because success is probably 80 or 90% keeping the crap out of your life, getting rid of it, and then 10 or 20% of the things you add on to it. So 80, 90% is the via negativa, just getting rid of it. And then, you know, the 10 or 20 that you put on, that's gravy, right? But the vast majority of it is just get rid of it. Find those things in yourself that don't function, that are in your way, and just cast them by the wayside. If that's people in your life, okay, do that. All right, even if it's family, and don't get divorced. I'm a divorce attorney, but I want you to get divorced. But if it's family, get rid of it, okay? Like, if they're just holding you down, you gotta realize it, okay? That's tough, get rid of them. Friends, same thing, get rid of them. Find different friends. You can always find different friends, it's okay. Mentors, whatever it is, out. Addictions, whatever, just get rid of it. Limiting beliefs, you know, if you have limiting religious beliefs, you're probably wrong about those beliefs, because I don't think that God wants to limit us as human beings, okay? So look at those. Look at all of those things, get rid of those things so you can move up. That's where I am right now. That's the end of this process. For me, these are the lessons that I've learned as a law firm owner here in Salt Lake, and, you know, trying to get better all the time, trying to serve more people. Hopefully you've found some sort of value in this, and either a story that can help you out or one of the lessons that's learned here. I'm not making any money on this. I'm just here because I want to talk to specifically lawyers about how to increase their business, how to help more people, how to live better lives as lawyers, because lawyers, man, we're stressed all the time. And it's really tough for us. Our suicide rate is up there, our alcoholism rate, divorce rate is up there. It's way higher than it should be. And I just want to speak to the attorneys, and hopefully I've been able to do that a little bit today. But these really are lessons that anybody can learn in business, because the journey in pretty much any business is pretty similar. So hopefully you've been able to take something from this. If you like this, you know, and whatever medium you're on, follow me on LinkedIn, you know, subscribe on YouTube, whatever it is, right? I'm going to try to give this sort of encouragement and these sorts of lessons to help make my life better, and just talk about what I've done, which helps me improve, and then hopefully will help you improve too.